Good morning, Warriors. Hope you guys had a great weekend. Vigor Warriors back with another episode of Morning Talk. Vigor Warriors 2. Hope you guys had a nice weekend. Hope things are going well. Thank you guys for all the subscriptions, comments, some great comments of late from Lola and Shubham and other people. I appreciate all those subscriptions. I think we're getting near 400, so we're getting closer and closer. First goal is 500, then we'll go up to 1,000 and keep moving from there. But I hope you guys are doing well. It's great to kind of always be able to kind of talk and kind of talk about some of these issues and ideas. And certainly as I've said many times before, I'm no close to an expert on this thing at all. But I have gone a lot of experiences, and so I kind of give you my experiences and my take. As Shubham puts it, and Shubham, once again, a shout out to you for this good comment, my friend. This is a complicated type of thing. It's not black and white, and I think his questions today talked about that, and I want to kind of delve into this a little bit and talk about his ideas, his questions, and things that he mentioned in a few comments that he was talking about. And I always appreciate his comments, as I did Lola's. I think, once again, some very insightful, thought-provoking type of comments. Now, what Shubham's talking about in this one is and he's asking questions, why is it that God gives us pleasure for releasing? And then also talking about, why is it do we need to have self-control? And why is it do we need to have, to exert control, even though something seems so pleasurable, right? And I think that's kind of, and Shubham, if I'm getting this wrong, please send me another message, and I can kind of go into further. But I think that's kind of the gist. And it is really a well thought out question. And, there is not probably a good answer to it. I can try to give you the best answer I can with it based on my thoughts. And these are my thoughts and thinking about this for a while. I don't have, obviously, any kind of research or anything to back it up, but I'm going to just kind of give you my thoughts a little bit on this. So let's kind of talk about this. Why does God put us in a situation where we are, we have potential pleasure in releasing? And why is that something that we have to be very careful about? Because it can become very addictive. Well, first of all, we know that pleasure is something that is, in my opinion, from the evil one. I think too much pleasure from that end of it, and especially when something dealing with our bodies or dealing with something around us, is an enticing type of, gold, medallion, gold thing, trinket that people want. And so they strive after that, thinking that that's going to be their pleasure. And it gives them a short-term pleasure. But here is where here's where the catch is. The catch is that you become addicted to that, and that's that drug type of addiction you're talking about when you talk about addiction. I believe there's good pleasure and bad pleasure. And I have to kind of think to myself, is there really a pleasure to this, or is it more just a release, is what we're feeling? See, it's one thing to have pleasure where you're with your friends and you're enjoying stuff and you're in like this journey where you just feel great about yourself. You feel great, God is with you, everything is going wonderful, and yeah, there's up and down times at times, but you just feel good. That's different than releasing to feel pleasure. And I do think that we look at it as a pleasure because we are releasing something from stress. But in actuality, if we did not have a lot of that stress, if we were actually having a baseline type of normality that we would normally have if we weren't releasing all the time, you would feel that type of happiness all the time. See, this is where it comes down to that peace and happiness that you feel when you're on your journey. This is why this is all very deceiving, I give you an example. Let's look at that. Let's look at Adam and Eve. Let's talk about this analogy for a little bit, because we've talked about it before. But let's talk about this type of idea that we're talking about here. So Adam and Eve were part of paradise, and they had everything they wanted to, right? And they felt they were at this point where they were peaceful and happy. Now, was this feeling actually real? I don't know. You know, I don't know, obviously, what's going through the minds of two individuals like this. But obviously, something came along and tempted them. And all of a sudden, now they wanted to see what was on the other side. And so this thing between good and evil always has been with us and will always be with us, because Satan will always be part of what's happening. And that's not necessarily a bad thing in a sense, because if Satan is with us, that means we know what the good side is. And this is where I think that we get into this dilemma a little bit. Why this makes it very complicated. Because without the light, you can't see the dark. And without the dark, you can't see the light. You have to know what's on the other side. And I think in Adam and Eve's case, they did not know what was on the other side. And before they figured it out, it was too late. Now, I believe that in our cases, especially for us going in retention, a lot of us have seen the other side as far as retention goes, and losing energy and things like that. So we've seen the other side. But the idea then is that when you understand that there is a good and bad, when you understand there's a light and dark, then you're striving to make sure you're keeping the light side of your life. And I think when it comes down to it, if you're able to keep a balance, and you're able to keep on your journey, as I'm getting close to, I think it's 690 days of NoFap, so we're getting close to 700 here. You're at the point where I feel so comfortable with myself and so happy with all of this, that even though thoughts come through, the thoughts are coming through because you're always thinking, well, what about the other side of things, right? And I think this is why God gives us the idea of saying, okay, we still have happiness, we still can have, pleasure by just having the paradise, which in my mind is retaining, unless you're going to have a child. Now, once again, having a child does give you some pleasure, and I think that certainly is something that God wanted to have with us as well. But when I look at this situation, I believe we go back to that whole story about Adam and Eve, and how many different meanings that story has. And the biggest meaning really is that you have to know that there is good and bad. And I think a lot of people don't. They don't really believe there's a spiritual side of things. They don't believe that there's a side of things that can be evil. They believe it's all good, and actually if they don't believe in God at all, then they don't believe in any kind of spiritual life. Then basically what they're thinking is that this is all together. And this is where I think that that Satan and the evil one can actually go ahead and trip you up and give you so-called that apple of life, so that you're able to eat into the apple, and all of a sudden now you're seeing things from a different perspective. And the whole thing is that will be able to help you, and somehow make you a better person, which in fact it makes you the worst person, because now you're being addicted to a lot of that type of stuff that's the evil one is trying to push on you. So when we look at this, it is a very strong paradox that we have to be careful of, to understand it, yes, but also to be able to understand how not to get involved in it. And I think in my case, being 45 years involved in it, I could see a lot of the pitfalls, and I can't get them all, but I can actually see a lot of them, so that I have a better way to challenge this. And so I think now, when I was 57 years old, I think I was ready for this. I wasn't ready before that. But I think the question that Shubham talks about, as far as why does God give us that pleasure, I think it goes back to that Adam and Eve. And the reason that I think we need to have self-control is because I think people will eventually struggle with paradise. And I don't know, I think it's in human nature, and maybe this is part of the evil one as well, that, Adam and Eve, I think at some level, paradise became, I'd say is boring, but I think it wasn't what Adam and Eve as a human being wanted. And maybe there's something within a human being, and this is why I struggle a little bit with the concept as well, because I think that it's a complicated type of thing. There's something in the human being that looks at creating order from opposite polarities. So when you look at this, I think that people will struggle. I'm going to give you examples. When you're looking at people who look at different types of vacations they take, they're great in planning the vacation, going places, but sometimes they get so tired of the vacation that's even worse for the vacation than the vacation was not even a vacation. And I think a lot of times what happens is people move to areas they think are great areas, and within a few months they get tired of it. And this, I think, is a key type of thing when it comes to being bored. And I think that's why a lot of people get into these type of self-destructive behaviors. They know it's self-destructive. They know smoking is self-destructive. Jumping off cliffs is self-destructive. Doing all these type of things are self-destructive. But the key is that there needs to be some adrenaline, some excitement for people to feel like they're alive. They can't sit there and just have things be like even keel. I believe in my mind, after all this time, almost 700 days, that this is what life really should be. You should have a calming, peaceful type of existence where you're happy. You don't have to have thrills by the minute to be exciting. I think this is also not one of these societal things that people say, well, you're not living life unless you're doing it my way, or type of thrill by the minute type of life. And that's just not the case. When you're looking at this thing, that's not really the case. You're talking about something that is different than the regular life type of style. And I think that this is why people struggle with this whole idea of, well, let's get some peace in our life. They don't really want peace, except for maybe a couple of days here and there. They take a day off, and then they get a little peace and quiet for a little bit, but they really want excitement. And where world is, especially in inner cities and bigger cities, people are set in this idea of having hectic lives because they're doing something. Sitting around peaceful, struggling, with life. This is what, people don't want peaceful. People want hectic, chaotic. Even though they may not say that, and they complain about it. I mean, a lot of people struggle, for instance, taking a Sabbath day, because now you got to sit and take a day. And I have to admit, I'm one of those. It's a struggle trying to take the Sabbath day, because all of a sudden now you're stopping all these activities, and I've got to do a better job with that myself. But I think it goes back to this whole idea that people feel in our society that life has to be always exciting, always hectic, always something that people go through, and they just continue to do one thing after another and another thing, and not have just a happy, peaceful existence. And I do think that that's part of the equation here we're talking about, because people then look at these things and they say, okay, there's pleasure, and the evil one will take advantage of this, of course, and give you that mirage of pleasure for a short period of time. But is it pleasure, or is it an enticement that gets you to go ahead and stay in this mode? See, for those people who really are at the level we're talking about, and I'm talking about long-term type of retentions here, those people don't have any problems when it comes to addictions back and forth because they realize they've gotten this level of self-control to be able to handle this type of paradox. You realize you don't need to have this excitement. In fact, you're happy living a life where you're praising the Lord. You're doing things, interacting with people. You know, you're doing things to help people. And you're living a life that God intended you to live. And you're happy more on the inside than anything else. Though you don't need actual type of, you don't need a lot of these other types of things that people do. And so when you talk about people who do drugs, right? Even doing marijuana. I know it's legal in certain states and things like that, but doing these type of things are mind-altering. Now, why do people do mind-altering stuff? Well, because they're not happy with a peaceful life. And this is why we did it. This happened when I was a kid as well. Back in the 60s and late 60s, early 70s, you know, colleges all the time did experiments on LSD and drugs and Timothy Leary and all this kind of stuff, you know, zone out and tune out and, you know, this type of stuff. Well, people did that because they wanted to have an out-of-body experience. And a lot of artists, you know, they actually did art and music and things like that when they were on LSD and things like that because they were trying to get an out-of-body experience because they weren't happy with the peaceful existence that God gives you. It's almost like you're trying to play God, and that's not a good thing, of course. And so you find that, and it always comes back to hurt these people, and they get to the point where they're not even, you know, they're getting the consequences of what they put out. So I find this question a very interesting question again. And Shubham, thank you so much for, you know, shout out to you for talking about this. It is something that is a real good question. And once again, in summary, the best thing, the opinion I can give you on this is the fact that people do not really want peace and quiet and a paradise. People do not want paradise. People want chaos. And this is where I think the problem is. Because once you do that, then people get enticed by pleasure, and they have to release from that, and so they need to have that stressful type of thing. So, again, Shubham, thank you so much. My friends, April 25th, 2022, you guys have a great day. Continue to battle on, and we'll keep moving forward. God bless you guys.